All right, so this is harvest ethic number 9. There's 10 of them. That means you all have gotten through 8 of them. See that math there is quick for you, yeah? And we're going to be on number 9 today, and some of you you've just been so excited about me getting to number 9, and some of you are so not excited because the topic itself makes you uncomfortable. And if you are in either one of those bunches, hold on. Everybody just grab your seat real quick. Just hold on to your seat. It's going to be okay. Today we're going to be talking about this ethic, that we should care more about love. You can put it up for me. I will. Thank you. We should care more about love. Put that first ethic up there for me. Yeah, there you go. We should care more about love and less about sex. Now, it seems like we're going to talk about sex today, and that will only be about the first 10 minutes. And here's the deal. If that makes you uncomfortable, you're weird. Because statistically, the gentlemen in the room think about this about 7 times a minute, and the ladies think about it once a year. Once a day. Sorry, I just kicked into that. So this is a topic that should be openly discussed in the church, because it is one that seems to be, we'll get to that in a moment. All right, so I'm going to lighten you guys up, because you're definitely stiff right now. That's not a good way to put that. All right, Lord. I'm finally going to be famous for the wrong reason. I know this is going to hit the TikTokies or whatever. All right, here we go. Let's do some memes. Let's get this crowd a little. I can't use any words right now. All of them seem to have bad connotations. Let's do this. Me, don't try me. Them, I thought you were Christian. Me, yeah, but I'm from the south side of the kingdom. Anybody from the south side of the kingdom? Like you love Jesus, but yeah, all right. Number 2, the only thing my wife hates more than picking a place to eat is the place I picked. Anybody feel that? Okay. Number 3, Taco Bell drive-thru at 1 a.m. will have a $2,000 Mercedes S65 waiting right behind a 96 Cavalier that's never had the oil changed, followed by a moped ridden by 3 people, all craving the same thing, to live Moss. Truly the last great melting pot of class in this country. Any Taco Bell fans out there? And the last one. I don't want to party like it's 1999. I want to go grocery shopping like it's 1999. Anyone feel that? You're welcome. You can go back to the first graphic for me. One of the things that has become, unfortunately, has become a topic that the church has often been behind on. We'll just put it that way. Has been wrong on is things related to relationships and or intimacy and sex. So I did a quick little, just brief. This is by no means perfectly accurate as far as the dates and times, but you get the idea. Is my computer dead? No, it is not. Wake up, little Susie, wake up. All right, here you go. A brief history of sexuality, relationships, and the conservative Christian movement. In the 1920s, Christians, both Protestant and Catholic, rallied against new thinking and options regarding contraception. So when there started to be ways that both men and women could enjoy intimacy with one another and not have a child, the church was against it. The Catholic Church was against it up until, I think, just in the last 20 years. So the church was fully convinced scripturally that if you took any form of contraception, including the contraception that men wear, that you were in sin. So any of you in this building that family planned or know somebody who has and said, okay, we're not going to have any kids after 2, in the 20s and in some denominations even to this day, you are seen as violating the scripture where God asks us to populate the earth. You're seen as less than. And women bore this even more because if they weren't quote unquote fruitful with their wombs, when they said, I just don't think this is we don't want any more children, this is good for my life, or my body can't take having another child, they were shamed in the church in the name of God. And you have to take yourself back to those moments. We were fully convinced as the church that that was God's design and order and commandment for us. And we were wrong. I've met some couples that, never mind. All right. Then, around that same time, there was a huge push for censorship of authors like D.H. Lawrence, who today we go back to the writings of D.H. Lawrence, and none of us would look at those and be like, this should be censored, because there were moments in D.H. Lawrence's writing where he dared reference intimacy between two people, two adults that love one another, with purely the idea of it being about pleasure and not about procreation. So anybody that wrote or referred to sex as something that was outside of just procreation, the idea of having children, their books and literature were being censored. And the crazy thing is that the majority of the well-funded libraries around the world were controlled by religious institutions. Now we look back at those writings and we're like, what were we thinking? But we were so convinced we were right. In the 30s and 40s and beyond, many of the lynchings by white men of black men were because of the idea that black men would rape white men's women. So if they caught a black man looking in the direction of a family walking down the street, that was cause in some communities to publicly lynch that man because, quote unquote, he might try to rape my wife. Wrong again. And this, I'm just kind of proving to you, if you will, or laying out a case for how the church has been obsessed with sex in all the wrong ways for many years. In the 40s and 50s, the Protestant church began a movement to ban sex education that would begin specifically to teach women about their own independence and autonomy from the demands of their men. Going back that many years, and we still are fighting against that in culture. Going back that many years, 80 years, 90 years, they were fighting, 70, 80 years, they were fighting publicly the idea that women were learning that their body was their own, and they could decide what and when and how often their body could be available to their spouse or partner. And the church said anyone who thought, listen to me, that a woman was allowed to make the decisions about who could touch her body or not, anybody who said that was going to hell. I know this is uncomfortable to look at our past, but if we don't look at our past, then we can't learn anything. Because guess what? We repeat patterns. History is just a constant repetition of patterns, and until we begin to see those patterns and recognize them and say, hey, we don't want to continue this pattern, we're not going to learn anything. In the 50s and 60s and beyond, the debate against interracial marriages began to heat up in the conservative church. So you had white churches and you had black churches, and God forbid you had a person who was white and a person who was black who were in love with each other, and they wanted to attend somewhere. The church was like, both sides were like, you can't come here because he's here, or you can't come here because she's here. And this is not what we do here. Not only that, but it was encouraged from pulpits, quote unquote, that you shouldn't blend the cultures. Dating back to when I was alive. It just doesn't work. The cultures, they just don't work. And we did it in the name of God. And we used scriptures. Do I have this thing on like a, if I walk away for 10 seconds, it shuts off? I think I do. In the 80s, when the AIDS epidemic exploded, the church, instead of trying to figure out how we could help people and realize that people all over the nation were in crisis, and many of those came from the LGBTQ community and was mostly gay men, instead of saying that, we said it was, quote unquote, God's wrath on this community. From the pulpit, we celebrated the idea that people were withering away in disease and dying. We celebrated because it proved we were right. And it was so wrong on every level. You think God's in heaven like, this group down there just won't get it together. They just won't get it together. I'm going to send something that specifically targets them and take them out, wipe them out. He's up there. He's like, yeah, 100,000 died this year. Gabriel, get over here. Let's blow the trumpet. He sent his son into the world to die the cruelest of deaths so that all of mankind could be saved, that all of mankind would know what it's like to be divinely loved, that all of mankind would know that they were valuable. Amen. And we preached from pulpits that the AIDS epidemic was God's wrath. And the history goes on and on and on and on. And that's just stuff having to do with relationship and sexuality. And if I got into human rights or civil rights or any of that, the church has been on the wrong side of that by and large on almost everything. We fought women voting. We fought people of color voting. We fought ending slavery. We've done it on every level. And has there been pockets of Christians and Christianity that were on the right side of it? Yes. But the majority, the loud voices, the influential voices, the people with money and power were on the wrong side of every civil rights issue, every issue of sexuality, every issue when it came to relationships, every issue when it came to racial injustices in the world. Every time we've been on the wrong side of it. And today we're facing another crisis. And yet again, we're on the wrong side of it. And you can't look me in the eye and say, no, this time we have it right. That's what we've said every time we had it right. So now we're entering the arena when it comes to gender identity and the LGBTQ community, and there's a lot of nuances there. I'm not saying one thing or another about it, other than the fact that we're losing sight of the fact that when we're discussing a child who's going through some gender identity confusion stuff or having some, you're trying to figure that out, we're forgetting the fact that it's a child. We treat that child like a political pawn to bring them up in debates and to have one-liners to the CNN reporter. It's a child. It's a family struggling, trying to understand, trying to do the right thing, trying to get it right. Is anyone in here a parent? Or like a godparent? Raise your hands. All right, everyone keep your hands up who's a parent or a godparent of any way, shape, or form. Okay. How many of you in this room have made at least one mistake as a parent? Put your hands down if you made a mistake. Leave your hand up if you've never made a mistake. All right, that's great. Only Tommy has not made a mistake. All right. I believe it, though. I believe it with you. You're a good egg. I believe it. Yeah. So we're invading people's homes to try to apply some distant morality on a situation that is actually very human, and trying to figure out how to guide families through very complex things. And I know some of your situations in here, and some of your family situations are way stranger, way more strange than some of the things we talk about. All right? But you're learning to make it work You're figuring it out. You're walking through it. We cannot continue to be more obsessed. I'm going to say this only one time, and then I'm not going to say it again, but I need you to understand it. We cannot continue to be more obsessed with what people do with their genitalia than we are about loving our neighbor. If you're more worried about who your neighbor is shacking up with than you are about if they're doing all right, if they're okay, do they feel lonely? Is anybody looking after them? Do they have a friend? Do they have somebody who cares? Do they feel valuable? If we don't prioritize that over all of the rest, then it's just, honestly, don't give me this, oh, we're just trying to help people. No, we're not. Do you hear me today? I'm going to say this too. I can't help myself, Lord. I should have licked a Xanax this morning, okay? I want to say this right now to you. The church in America is so far off when it comes to this. And the reason is not because, quote unquote, the stand they've taken, although I believe they're wrong on that. It's the fact that we have put so much time, energy, into proving that we are right about things when at the end of the day we're missing the main point, and that is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind, and the second commandment to love your neighbor as yourself. And the scripture says all the law and the prophets. That means everything we read in that book hangs on those two things. In other words, I want you to picture this. You've got two things like hanging from the ceiling. We hang these lights up here. They're hung on these little clamps. If you don't have those clamps holding on, then everything falls crashing to the ground. So don't give me Romans 1, don't give me Leviticus, don't give me 1 Corinthians, don't give me any of the stuff out there if we haven't learned to hold on fast to loving God and loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. That is the most important things we can do. And what would happen if we dropped all the debates, we dropped all the nonsense, we stopped being used as a political pawn one way or another, and actually just started loving one another, loving our Republican neighbor, our Democrat neighbor, loving our MAGA neighbor, loving our whatever the MAGA equivalent over here is. I don't know what it is on the left. Super woke, yeah, Antifa or whatever, yes, Antifa. Has anyone ever met someone for Antifa? Okay, they're out there, they promise. Anyways, so we've got if we just didn't matter, we just learned to love one another, learn to look across the aisle in church, look across the aisle in a grocery store and see the human being in front of us, the one that God shed his blood for and died for, that we would have life eternally, and realize, do you understand that no matter how long I've been in church, that I'm no more valuable to God than somebody who's sitting in a gutter somewhere who's made all the mistakes in the world and maybe even ended up there because they made those mistakes. I'm no more valuable to God than that person. Come on. You come to hear me every week. That's awesome. Some of you don't. I got your number. But you come to hear me every week, and that's awesome. But if you treat me, come on, if you treat me differently than you would a black female trans person that walked into this church, which is one of the most, that combination, black, female, trans, has the highest rate of people groups in our nation that are being murdered. And oftentimes, those people, those beautiful human beings, that they don't even follow up to try to figure out or solve the murder. They're seen as almost like someone to throw away. And if one of those wonderful humans walked in this church and we treated them any differently than you treated me, or I treated them any differently than I treated Robin or my mom, it's not just like a whoopsies, it's like we've missed the whole stinking thing. All of it. Those clamps just open up and everything comes crashing to the ground. None of it works. None of it. The gospel doesn't work unless we love people that well. And I love this because people always say, well, if you love somebody, you tell them the truth. And I just want to stop them and say, okay, your breath stinks. fashion is terrible. And your wife told me she's not in love with you. How's that feel? Well, that wasn't very nice. Oh, I'm just loving you. Do you feel loved right now? No, I do not. Exactly. Let me throw some scriptures up here for you that are most of us know. They're fairly simple. But let's go to the famous love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13. I just pulled out a couple of verses because I don't feel like we can handle all of them. This is behind me. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but it rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, and love never ends or never fails. And do you know what this word in the Greek is? This word that says never fails? It means essentially this. It means that love never loses its altitude. It's the same word that we would use as stall in an airplane. When an airplane stalls and it starts to go like this, it nosedives to the earth. That's the same equivalent ancient Greek word that we would have in the English language today. They're literally saying love never loses its altitude, which means we never stoop low when we're loving somebody. We always take the high road. We always stay up here. We never come crashing to the ground and call that love. We never put our finger in somebody's face and straighten them out and call it love. That's not love. That's your opinion and some of our addiction to confrontation that some of us have. That is not love. Love never loses its altitude. Go to the next group for me. I have two scriptures in the next one. 1 Corinthians 16:14 says, let all that you do be done in love. Now, I don't know how we get out of this one. I've seen some nifty ways to work ourselves out of scriptures, but this one is pretty hard. Let all we do be done in love. I mean, generally speaking, if you come to me with an opinion that is going to make us divisive, make us treat people like second-class citizens, make us have any sort of what I believe anti-Jesus sentiment towards another human being, I'm probably going to shut you down pretty quickly personally. But that being said, don't even dare approach me with that nonsense if you can't tell me that everything you do is in love. Like, let's do this. Let's do this. Because 1 John 4:8 says, anyone who does not love does not know God because God is love. Don't tell me about how, we got to stop this. Don't tell me about all the scriptures you know. Well, I have a master's degree in ministry. Cool. Great. But you're a jerk. Some of the most difficult human beings to get along with in the world. How's that? Have D-Mins. That's a doctorate in ministry. That's not short for Dan Minor. They have D-Mins. I have been in rooms with mostly men who have lots of experience, I'm on my 65th book, And somebody comes in, from our crew over the years, we have guest ministry in. Somebody comes in and drops off water, Someone real pious and servant-oriented, won't talk too much. They come in, they drop off some water. And then Mr. D-Min with the 65 books he's written goes, I asked for room temperature water. No, hello, thank you very much, nothing. Just never ask the person their name. Never try to figure out how their day's going. I don't have time for that. I'm here to deliver the word of the Lord. That is no more the word of the Lord if that's coming out of a vessel that believes that they can treat people that way. That's no more the word of the Lord than a donkey. It just isn't. Well, Dan, you seem pretty down on other ministers. No, I'm not. There's a lot of great ones out there. I'll tell you this, though. There's a lot of not great ones out there. And it's because we have gotten more concerned with being right about our little boxes that we've built around and camped around our pet theologies than we have about pursuing the heart of God and actually finding out if people are actually feeling loved by the God that we're selling. Come on. We get up here and say, God this and God that and God this. And the minute they come to the altar and say, yes, I want to be a Christian. I want God in my heart. Then it's like, boom, we've got them. And we treat them like trash. And we do it in the name of God. And then if they dare feel bad or speak up about it, what do? We make them feel like it's their fault. It's the biggest scam in the world. And it wasn't the way the church was intended to be. The church was intended to be a place that was safe and welcoming for all, and that you could come and not be perfect and not get it and be a mess and your life be all over the place, but you're loved as a human being, as a creation of the divine, and you're welcomed here and treated as equal, and the pastor has no more rights or connections to God than you do. That's the truth. Is this all right, or is this too much? All right. That was a very low rumbling yes, but I'll take it. Do the next two scriptures, then we'll close together. Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. So this is an interesting scripture, right? Because we have some people convinced out there that Harvest Church, specifically me, but our leadership stands behind me, so I blame them when I need to. That recently somebody wrote an email. It happens every week. Just a couple days ago, somebody wrote me this big, long message, and they simply said, you're going to burn in hell because you have a responsibility to let people know in your church that they're an abomination and they're going to hell. I don't normally engage. But it had been a while. I let a lot of people go in the last couple months. This one wasn't going without a fight. So I got an email back and forth with this person. And I was thinking about this scripture because I thought, even if she's right, which she's not. First of all, if we want to talk about sin and that keeping us in or out of heaven or in and out of the favor of God or in and out of church, we'd all be in trouble. Number two, if for some reason this lady is right and some of you, because of the way that you love, have some sort of special extra bad sin, and she's right about that, it says that love covers a multitude of sins. So any way you spin this up, the church is on the wrong side of it. You can spin the record on the A side or the B side, and it's just going to play, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. We're wrong. Either way, the only way forward as the church is love. And to value when another human being loves another human being. When two consenting adults love each other and are building a life together, we should embrace them and support them. Right? Just the way we value this, we value all. First John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love. In other words, if my words of quote-unquote truth cause somebody to fear their very mortality or where life leads them or what happens after death, have they really encountered love? Because if she's encountering words of love for me, she leaves feeling better, not worse. She walks out the door. You know. This is the argument I get. Well, don't you tell your kid not to touch the hot stove? Oh, you're a genius. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. When it comes to protecting somebody's safety that's a child and that is dependent on you, and you're protecting them from doing something unsafe, you're going to use that dynamic to say that I need to walk around the room and tell everybody what's wrong with them. It's just not reality. It's not true. It's a completely different dynamic. And the truth is, according to this, that there's no fear in love. So when you've encountered love, there's no fear in it. Fear is not in the equation. If it creates fear and shame and guilt and all this nasty stuff that most of us carry around with us, and somebody's trying to tell us in that encounter, I'm just trying to love you, you look at them and say, there's no fear in love, and right now I'm feeling all the fear and shame and guilt in this world, so I'm going to just go on a limb and say, I know you might be trying, but this isn't love. Love leaves us better. Love encourages us. Love brings hope to us. Love brings joy to us. Love never, ever, ever heaps fear upon people. No exceptions. We were joking around this week, but not really. I think it was with you, wasn't it? Yeah. And we were talking about the old thing that used to sweep the nation, and you know about too. Many of you do. Anyone ever see Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames? You ain't even saved if you haven't seen Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. We were kids, and Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames came into town, and we actually found Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames online on YouTube and watched it, and I am 42 years old, and it scared the you-know-what out of me. That stupid thing scarred more children than, come on. And what they would do is they would come into town, and it was basically like people would act out a scene where they ended up dying. Sounds good so far? In some tragic way, and then they would go from that death scene to being in front of St. Peter on stage, and then St. Peter would go to see if their name was in the Lamb's Book of Life, and if he couldn't find their name, they would go to hell. Do you want to describe it, Corey? You did a great job the other night. Corey said, and hell was marked by, and depending on the budget of the church, red, what was it? Yeah, red chiffon flames, dancing like this. And then the walls were covered in red tinfoil that you had to get during Christmas and save up. This could be used for the season of giving and sharing, or for our hell scene in August. And then if the church had a real good budget, you'd also have a fog machine. And then the church would get real dark, the red, the strobe lights. Do you remember the strobe lights that came in the little wooden boxes? I know you had about 10 of those. And you had to crank them up on the back side of them for how fast you wanted them to go. So we just had a little, like some little kid back there who's probably scared to death because they literally were playing in hell the whole time. We'd plug in the strobe light at the right time and start strobing, right? And then the demons would come out. And I don't know why this, but every church play, every youth group play where there are demons, they always move like this. You say, how do you do it? I've done it. That's how. It's like they couldn't get started, but they can get started in their hands. They were like Chris Martin, but like he did a lot of drugs. You know what I mean? So that was what they would do. And then they would come get the person. And sometimes it was like a teenage girl. And then the teenage girl would scream bloody murder as they dragged her into the pits of hell. And then after enough of those, you have like one person, usually a farmer or something, who didn't drink. When the other kids were drinking, the farmer's son said, my dad taught me I shouldn't drink, and you guys shouldn't either. So all the kids get drunk, DUI, car accident, driving under the influence, everybody's dead, including the farmer kid. But because he didn't drink that night, he got into heaven. And then we followed up the screams and the sounds of torture and this weird Satan noise that would come over the loudspeaker, like that, with, would you like to encounter the love of God. And I was like, yeah, I'll do anything right now. I will be quartered by a horse if that's what it takes. Like, let's do this. We'd run to the altar. We'd say, please, please, don't send us to hell. And that was called evangelism. And that is not love. If the only way we can get somebody to love is to tell them the consequence of not loving, then it isn't love. You think my conversations with her at night go, I love you so much, and she says, yeah? I say, yeah, do you love me? And she goes, give me some reasons to love you. And I say, well, if you don't love me, I will hunt you down. I will burn your car. I will slash your tires before I burn your car. And I will tell everybody that you're an alien. And I don't know. Like, no. She's going to be like, I'll pass. But the consequence of not loving me is you're going to burn eternally. I feel that when I say that to you. I'm just kidding. I feel like I need to get you back for something. You're going to burn eternally. But if you just love me, I'll take care of it. And as believers, for decades, we went, yeah, they have a way out. Makes sense. There's no fear in love. I'll leave you with this because we're a little over time, but let's say this. Let's leave here today and stop entering into the culture wars and buying the BS that we somehow, as the church, have a long history of being on the right side of issues of relationship and sexuality, because we don't. We're batting zero. That's number one. And number two, let's get back to loving our neighbor and not trying to use fear and punishment to somehow draw people. The scriptures say that the goodness of God is what draws people to change their mind, metanoia, the word we use for repentance, but it's the Greek word metanoia, to change our mind. Meta being changed, noia being mind, or consciousness. It's the goodness. I would venture to say that's probably also the goodness of Dan that draws, I know some of you it's hard to believe. Does somebody just go, I have goodness. The goodness of Dan is probably what draws Robin to love me. The goodness of Robin is what draws Dan to love her. Goodness and kindness and compassion is what draws people into the equation of love, not fear. Make good sense today? We have one more ethic. I'll be here next week for that. I usually am. And then the following week, Jim's going to be doing Harvest Stories, which is going to be great. We have one more ethic. We're going to finish it next week. If you can, be here, because it's the final culmination of the whole thing. And we'll have been through all 10 of them. And we love you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And if you were spacing out and not paying attention to our announcements, you can go online and see everything that we have going on. It's all on our social media. We love you. We'll see you next week. Thank you.